right, welcome back once again, everybody. I'm Don Seifert. It's the Dr. Tree Fruit and Don podcast. I'm here with Dr. Sean Kumar. Say hi, Sean.
Hello, everyone.
Dr. Kari Peter. Say hi, Kari.
Hi.
And Dr. Greg Krawcheck. Say hi, Greg.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so we're going to start with Dr. Kumar because it is harvest and he is our pomologist. So take it away, Sean.
Thanks, Don. So I just wanted to start out with Adams and Franklin counties. That's where we have been. That's one of the sites where we have been doing maturity updates. And so we are getting into the fag end of Gala harvest. I mean, unretained Gala was harvested. I mean, I think it was finished harvesting last week or early this week. And we have slowly gotten into harvesting retained Galas this week, and many straggling Gala left over next week. It is important to harvest your Gala as soon as possible, especially since we did receive close to a half inch of rain. And we want to make sure that our beautiful bright red Galas are not splitting. And so it's important to get them out by then. They seem to have recently on Monday, we tested the apples and they seem to have good bricks, 12 bricks. And they also have decent firmness at 23 pounds, might have reduced to about 22, 21 pounds by now. And they have really, really good color development. And this past week, I think, was very helpful for improving color, especially if you didn't see color in your Honeycrisp. You might see a little bit color last week. You might see a little bit better color this week with the temperatures that have been a little bit more conducive for color development. And so as we move from Gala, we'll move into harvesting Honeycrisp. And Honeycrisp is holding steady at a starch index of 3. And it has good bricks, again, at 12.2 that we tested here in Biglerville. And the firmness is quite low at 18 pounds pressure. So that is something to keep note of for Honeycrisp, that the firmness has been consistently decreasing since the past few weeks. We have been taking measurements, and while that is normal, it's something to keep note of when harvesting Honeycrisp. And Honeycrisp is the one variety where you're always thinking of the trade-off of waiting for longer for color development versus how that will impact storage and storability of your produce. And so it's important to try to harvest Honeycrisp when it is ready, and only wait for color if you absolutely have to, because otherwise it will impact the storage. And so there's also retain was applied, I think 1 week, 2 weeks earlier for Honeycrisp. And so those can wait until the week after next week for harvest. And so we have some time with those Honeycrisp. But we're seeing that overall, it seems like in Adams County, we're moving from Gala to Honeycrisp very soon. And overall color development in Honeycrisp, especially in the block that we were testing, it was quite low at 20% red color. And so there is still some ways to go for them to improve color. And so I think it might be good to wait for a week maybe, but I wouldn't say for much longer than that, for the same reason that we'll get into the firmness will become quite low. And it will also result in not suitable storage if we harvest them a little bit too late. And in Berks County, we have both Gala and Honeycrisp. And so they are slightly behind Adams this year in terms of soluble solids and size. But if you look at firmness, they are quite similar in the sense that Berks County is quite similar in firmness to Adams County, and they have at least Gala, they have good red color development in Gala, and even in Honeycrisp, there's anywhere, see, it seems like 40% red color development in Honeycrisp. So slowly inching towards maturity. And so something to keep in mind again for Honeycrisp in Berks, while you might want to wait for more colors, firmness is at approximately 17 pounds. And so while you can wait for a week, week and a half, we probably cannot wait longer than a week and a half to harvest Honeycrisp. if we want to have good storage potential for Honeycrisp. And so that was my main takeaway. The other thing I quickly wanted to mention was we had some cool weather, and we are getting into some more warmer weather next week and the week after. And so when you have at least the next few days, we have some warmer weather, and then it's getting cool again. And so whenever you have temperatures that's above 85, 90, that can have a severe impact on firmness of your fruit. And so that's something to keep in mind. If firmness is a measure that you're primarily going with, you want to try to harvest the day before it goes to that temperature, or when you're harvesting the day off in the early mornings or the evenings, so that and then you can quickly take that produce back to cooling them. So that's something to keep in mind for harvest. And it seems like we have a really good crop of Gala. Honeycrisp is a little bit variable depending on the orchard because of fruit set. We had variable fruit set to begin with, and so when you have low fruit set and low crop load, you are more susceptible to bitter pit. So we are seeing a decent amount of bitter pit in a lot of orchards. So that's something to keep track of. And when you so that's something to note. And we are when you have low crop load, you will have bitter pit. Despite your best efforts in improving the calcium in the tree. So the best way to deal with that is to try to have a good set to begin with. And that is why your NAA sprays, 3 or 4 NAA sprays from bloom to about 25, 30 days after full bloom, that becomes very important, not only for return bloom, but also for preventing this variable set, so as to increase your bitter pit as well. So that's just something I wanted to mention. And then I hope you're keeping track of our maturity updates. The past few weeks, we have sent out an email at 1 p.m. Please note that our future maturity updates from next week, we will be sending them out at 4 p.m. instead of 1 p.m. Just to give us a little bit of extra time to get it through the system, get it approved and published. And so all of these measurements we take on Monday, and we hope to get it to you by Tuesday evening. And please let us know if you have any comments about the maturity updates.
Awesome. Good report, Sean. I know you and I talked a little bit about this, or I think we did. Maybe it was a dream that I had. It's been a long week. I know that one of the things I was looking at in Berks is that I had very variable um, starch iodine ratings on both sets of fruit. Some were towards the bottom end of scale, one, twos, threes, and some were all the way up at five and sixes. But I know we also had a very kind of extended bloom this year. Do you think that some of our thinning during thinning season maybe knocked out some of the things in the middle, and we caught maybe left maybe some of the early fruit and some of the later fruit?
I mean, that is very possible, Don. That's a really good observation that you made. And we do see that in the starch test picture in the maturity updates in your region, where some of them are extreme, like should have been harvested 2 weeks ago, while some of them are ready for harvest now or next week. And so that is very possible since we had an extended bloom. And especially when you're with blossom thinners, it could have happened that the middle portion was taken out. And similarly, when you had fruitlet thinning, it is possible that uh, the time when you targeted was the right time for the fruit in the middle and not for fruit at both the edges. However, having said that, I will say that it is not entirely the case that that is the reason, because sometimes we do have some consolidation that happens. If, for example, if we have a lot of warm weather, like we had a few days of warm weather in June, early July, and so that warm weather might sometimes help to consolidate the middle and the later stuff, and then the stuff that's further ahead, that will always be further ahead. And so there's also a possibility there with some of those extreme events where the later fruit caught up with the middle fruit. And so it looks like we have some early fruit and the rest are all quite behind. So that is also a possibility.
Gotcha. Cool. Appreciate the insight there. Yeah, it's just it was one of those things. I had a help from Master Gardener processing the data, and he's like, "Boy, those don't look like those." And I was like, "No, they do not. Those are very different."
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, with variability with the tree is expected, and with the sort of variable weather that we get during bloom and during the initial growth of fruitlets, where you have these warm spells, and we move back to the cool spells, and then warm spells again. So that helps to further increase the uh, variation in within tree because of that variation in the weather that we see.
Awesome. Thanks. And I'll just edit through that. Um, and next up, we will have Kari. So,
Uh,
Kari, what are we thinking about right now when it comes
oh,
to
whew,
where
boy.
we're at in the season?
Well, okay, so kind of just to kind of recap the month of August, because we went from raining all the time to the spigot being turned off in August, at least for the Adams County area. And I think for a lot of Pennsylvania, but I do know that parts of Pennsylvania has gotten a little more rain than we have here in Adams County. So as of today, which today is August 22nd, Friday, August 22nd, this week, for us on August 20th, we had an inch of rain that fell. We are still getting significant chunks of rain. And this is just a reminder for folks moving forward with their harvest to not stop spraying. I know that right now harvest is the priority, and oftentimes we think, we just don't have time to spray and that we get our last sprays on in mid-August or late August. That is not acceptable for late season varieties like Pink Lady, Fuji's, and some other varieties. They are still going to be quite vulnerable. Remember, we are in the thick of hurricane season, tropical storm season. We had, I don't think we were graced with the presence of Hurricane Aaron, at least here in the south central part of the state. But the season isn't over yet for as far as those pretty impactful storms that can dump a lot of rain. So with that, there's a lot of disease out there. There's a lot of pathogens out there. This has been an excellent year for um, all of the diseases, pretty much. Scab, it was an excellent scab year. I'm seeing about 100% infection on my untreated fruit. On my galas right now, every single fruit has scab on it. So this we definitely had good scab conditions early on. There's lots of rust out there in the leaves. Marsanina, apple blotch is definitely out there. Uh, Powdery mildew is a problem. And I know the one that folks is definitely on a lot of people's mind is bitter rot. We talked about bitter rot, I believe, in the last podcast, but just to briefly revisit it again. So I have had some phone calls and text messages and emails from people saying, "Hey, I've been spraying all the time for the last several weeks, but I still see bitter rot." And so, with that, we need to take a look at the calendar and look at basically look not only look at the calendar, but look at your weather station calendar. If you have a weather station, seeing what the temperature was and when we had rainfall. And right now, what I want people to be thinking about are these like three chunks of dates, which I think were really, really critical for initial bitter rot infection. That was starting in mid-May, when I'm not quite sure how big the fruit were on. I'd have to go back through the sort of the early articles that Dr. Sean Kumar had put out. But May 15th through the 17th, we had decent infection conditions. And what am I looking for infection conditions? Upper 70s and at least 12 hours, 11, 12 hours of leaf wetness. And that leaf wetness can either be through rain or high humidity. So May 15th to the 17th was a possible time. Probably the most important infection of the season was around June 5th, 6th through the 10th. This was a long stretch, and I think this is where everyone got caught. So my recommendation, if you are seeing bitter rot in your any version of your Honeycrisp, whether it was your premieres, which are off the tree already, or Honeycrisp coming up, because I know Honeycrisp is coming up, I want you to take a good look at what you sprayed before June 5th, 6th to the 10th. If you were doing alternate row middle sprays during that time, if you only had Captan on during that time, was your last spray 10 days before that event? I mean, these are all questions that you need to ask yourself if you have a bitter rot problem on your Honeycrisp, because that may have been basically when the match was lit with regards to infection. Another good infection period was around June 17th, 19th. So I think that's when we had those early, and then we've had again scattered throughout the rest of the season. But I think that early part when people were caught off guard is when I don't think people were, even though I know I put out an update, I know I put out a disease update warning people about that early June time. I know I said it in the podcast. The mid-June one, I'm pretty sure I mentioned, but again, it was sort of little loosey-goosey around that time, and I wasn't expecting the rainfall. So, but I think folks need to take, when you have a chance, maybe now is not the time, but maybe it'll be a debrief this winter, a post-mortem, to look at your spray records to see where you could have missed things and why you have disease present. So that's my sort of big message, take home message for as far as for today, because I've had a lot of questions about that. And I think this fall, maybe late fall, when everything calms down a little bit, I'll maybe write a postmortem as far as from the disease perspective, just because it was so crazy this year. And as I've been informed by both Greg and our farm manager, Jared Shelley, we have spent a ton of money on fungicides this year at Freck because we were spraying all the time. And I was trying to make recommendations based on walking the walk. And so we spent a lot of money. This was an expensive year to keep fruit protected from the fungal diseases. And one thing I also to just emphasize about so rots are still a problem. So it's just not bitter rot. There are other rots out there that are problematic, and we know from research out of my lab, my former student now, Dr. Johanny Castro, is that the two most important post-harvest rots are alternaria rot and bullseye rot, both of which start in the field. We're not quite sure what the timing is, but they are problematic on later season varieties and varieties that are kept in storage for 3 or more months. So all the more reason to not put away that sprayer. And I can't emphasize that enough. And I know people roll the dice and take chances, but your pack out's going to suffer, especially if you work with a packer. And how do I know that? Because I hear from the packers about problems. And so, and I do look at your spray records to see where problems could have occurred in order to minimize the problems in the coming year. So, and I'm always happy to sit down with people to do that as far as a kind of a deep dive to see where things may have gone amiss and in order to course correct. But another disease that I want people for their radars is storage apple scab. This became a really big problem this year. People are saying storage apple scab. Okay, we haven't heard about that in a while. We haven't really talked about it. You will hear it this winter during the 2026 winter meeting season. Storage scab infections, so you won't know you have it until the fruit have been in storage for a period of time. And those infections can actually be initiated late, like in September, as a result of active infections that are out in the orchard from apple scab. And spoiler alert, this was a great apple scab year, as I said at the top of the podcast here. So there could potentially be quite a bit of apple scab out there. So all the more reason to be making sure you're keeping up with those sprays to protect your fruit from storage scab, because storage scab is still a threat. And that can really ruin a crop, unfortunately. And you will not know it's ruined until 4 months after the fact. And so this is something that I really want people to be mindful of, especially those working with packers. The packers will appreciate it. You will appreciate it. Your bottom line will appreciate it as far as really being careful about keeping your fruit protected, especially those later varieties that you know are probably going to be in storage for a few months. Uh, so so again, I am a broken record because I think I pretty much said similar points the last podcast, but it's worth repeating as far as what chemicals that are still should be okay to use. If you haven't exceeded the limits based on the label, you got Flynn Extra, Luna Sensation, and Maravon. Maravon is a 0-day PHI. Luna Sensation and Flynn Extra have 14-day PHI. If you have some varieties that aren't going to be harvested until October, Omega is still an option, and you Omega or Orbis. It's under a couple different names now. Fluazinam is the active ingredient, FRAC group 29. That is a 28-day PHI, so you could still put that in your spray tank for those varieties that are going to be harvested like a month or two down the line right now. So that is still an option. Tank mixing with Captam. And also another one not to forget, which it's a good one. It helps with stuff like sooty blotch and fly speck, which again, you can still get infection with those, fresh infections in September. Topsin or thiophanate methyl, T-methyl. Again, it comes under a bunch of different names, but T-methyl or thiophanate methyl. So it's Topsin, Talaris, and there's other names too. That's FRAC group 1. It's not, it has okay efficacy against rots. It's better than nothing, especially if you got frequent rain events. So just, I know this has been an expensive year because we've lived it at FREC. And I know it will continue to be expensive, but your bottom line really depends on it at this point, especially if the hurricane season is reminiscent of last year. And we really won't know until basically we go through it. So but don't take chances, not in a year like this, just because of how conducive things were earlier this year. So that is my soapbox for the day. Don, any questions?
No, I think it was pretty straightforward. Yeah, I know we bang the drum about, it's just like we get on here and it's like, hey, listen. But it's the sort of thing that bears repeating, right?
Yeah.
Um, I hear you
Eh,
talk about it. I've been here for 7 years now, and I hear you every year say like, "Hey, just because it's August, September, doesn't mean you can put that sprayer away yet."
Yeah.
And every year, someone says, "Well, I did, and I had trouble." And you
Yeah.
go, "Yeah, see, I told you."
Yeah. And then I do have the Packers coming to me telling me, can you please say this? And I was like, I do say it till I'm blue in the face. I was like, I will try to figure out more ways of saying the same thing in a more absorbable way, I guess. But
Maybe
yeah,
you
and I
skywrite it next year.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I may have to tattoo it. But I mean, like I said, Freck is right there, solidarity with everyone as far as this season, because I mean, this has been a challenging season for us too. So probably one of the most challenging ones just because of how wet it's been. And the season isn't over yet, even though August has been a little drier, which I'm kind of glad it's been a little drier, but it's not over, you know. I mean, we still have, we still got a couple more months of the hurricane season. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say there's one rolling off the coast right now. So
yeah, yeah.
awesome. Thanks, Gary.
Yep.
And Greg, last but not least.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah, thank you.
Uh, from my perspective, there's really not too new things to add to what we kind of covered 2 weeks ago. But let's just do a short reminder, what we talk about, because I think this is the issues I'm going to cover basically will be ongoing for the rest of the season. The biggest one I think everyone need to think about is brown marmorated stingbuck. Uh, in the last 2 weeks, after many different nuances and disturbances, we finally were able to put the insecticide-treated nets into orchards to do our project that shop is sponsoring in 2025. And we have them at 3 different locations. And we are catching and killing in those traps. Well, it varies from location, of course, but let's say that the hottest location on average killed about 300 stink bugs adults per trap. And this is 2 week combined data. And more than 2000 and more than 200 nymphs per trap. This gives you the idea how stingbug can actually show up into the orchard and how if your location is prone to stingbugs, how dangerous this can be for the fruit quality at harvest. Again, stingbug feeding will not destroy the fruit, but it will really affect the appearance of the fruit. And if we don't do anything, I mean, it takes about 2 weeks on apples between stingbug feeding and actually corking showing up on fruit. So you might have a stingbug, you might not see anything. Then you harvest the fruit, you put them in the storage, and it might turn out that there is a lot of fruit injured. Again, it's not a problem for everyone. It's not a problem at every location. However, if your orchards are bordering, woods, some homesteads with the trees, ornamental trees, or soybean, or even corn, then those blocks might need to be intensively monitored. And again, the lures that we have right now, they're mostly coming from Tresse. But you can also have lures from AgBio. You can also have lures from Alpha Scent. Uh, they are very effective, and they will tell you what to expect about stingbug. Uh, they are moving into the orchard right now. I mean, they started a few weeks ago, but they will be moving into the orchard at least until end of September, possibly into middle of October. Again, it depends when your fruit will be harvested, depends what the surrounding is. Your reaction to this might be different in different blocks. However, be aware of it and put the traps out. Put those traps. Again, they will not prevent the injury, but they will let you know because it's much easier to see them in the trap than try to spot a stingbug which does not leave a hole on the fruit, does not do any feeding on the foliage. They just come, feed, and fly away and feed somewhere else. So traps are really the only tool that can help you avoid unpleasant surprises later on. For the control, well, again, the issue is we are in the harvest time. So there are some products that you can use to control stingbugs. Normally, most of the pyrethroids, most of the neonicotinoids are very effective. However, the PHI play a role. I mean, the most effective products is anything containing bifenthrin, which is in product like Brigade or Bifenture. But again, this product has 14 days PHI, and it can be used only 2 times a season, per season, and consecutive uses have to be spread at least 30 days apart. But this product gives you the longest residual activity. But remember, 14 days PHI. Your shorter PHIs will be neonicotinoids, Admire Pro, Assail, or Belay on apples. Those have 7 days. The control will be shorter, but they are also effective. Those neonicotinoids, in addition to controlling brown marmorated, they also will go after leafhoppers, which in some orchards might create a problem, especially during the harvest. And those neonicotinoids also have some impact in controlling codling moth or oriental fruit moth. And codling moth and oriental fruit moth are actually the two other pests I want to mention today. This morning I checked NUA, and according to NUA, in Biglerville, we done with the flight of codling moth. Well, if you have a chance, go and check the FREC website. We're gonna post, I don't know the numbers at this moment because we're just checking the traps right now, but go and check the FREC website for the flight of codling moth in our orchards. And again, according to NUA, in our orchards, we're done with the flight. According to what we see in the traps and what I fully expect, we will be seeing the flight at least for another 3, if not maybe even 6 weeks. That's what happened last year. So be careful about it. Again, if the codling moth was controlled effectively during the first generation and during the second generation, then the chance of them causing any significant injury right now is minimal, and you don't have to worry about it. But if you happen to have traps and your traps are catching 5, 10, 15 codling moths per week, and NUA is telling you that flight is over, that something is wrong here. And basically you have to trust your traps, not what NUA will tell you. This is very important part. Very similar situation is with oriental fruit moth. We are at the end of the 3rd generation. Up to now, they kind of prefer to be on peaches. You know, with all the rain we had, and Kari talked a lot about it, you know, we still had peaches that were actively growing in late July, even early August. Right now, with the peaches being harvested and all the shoots really hardening and stopping the growth, all the oriental fruit moth, and they are not ready to diapause. Some of them are, but most of them are not, because they can fly until late October. Everything is weather dependent, depends what kind of temperatures we have. But the point I'm trying to make is that all the pressure that you potentially had in peaches right now will move to apples. And apples right now becoming a perfect crop for them. They can lay the eggs, the larva can develop. You know, at the time when we actually were identifying every larva that caused the rejections of fruit by gnats or moths earlier on, I mean, more than half of the loads that were rejected by gnats were because of the oriental fruit moth flying, depositing eggs, and larvae feeding on apples, and that was happening in September and October. So again, you can check the NUA, but if you don't have traps, you're playing a guessing game. Traps really will tell you if you have to worry about it or you don't have to worry about it. The neonicotinoids that you're going to use to control stingbug, if you decide that you need, they will control both codling moth and oriental fruit moth. They are not the best products, but they have ovicidal activity and they have larvicidal activity. I don't think we have any resistance in that area. Pyrethroids are less effective, but they do have codling moth and oriental fruit moth on the label. If you don't want to go the route of pyrethroids and you know the stingbug is not a problem, then maybe using virus to control codling moth is a good option, especially on the cultivars You have the trap, you're catching a lot, and you're planning to harvest the fruit in the next 7 days. Virus has zero phi, so if you spray the virus will actually control codling moth. For oriental fruit moth, if again traps tell you that well something has to be done, I would say that the best option, and this is something new, is to maybe use sprayable OFM pheromones, sex pheromones. There are formulations available on the market for sprayable oriental fruit moth mating disruption. And if you don't want to spray insecticide, but you wanna, the pressure is there, maybe spraying oriental fruit moth pheromone mating disruption is the option for this time of the season. It's a sprayable, it will not last forever, but I think it will give you 3, 4, maybe 6 weeks of control, or at least will disturb some of the communication between those males and females, and they will be less larvae. So this is something that, those are the options. Again, neonicotinoids that you're going to use for the stink bugs will control both codling moth and oriental fruit moth. Earlier on, Dan asked me a question about Lorsban. Uh, I'm not aware about new regulations that happen related to the Lorsban since the late fall of 23 going into 24, 25. At that time, as some of you might remember, Lorsban was unbanned from being available. Unfortunately, we use the word Lorsban, but none of the Lorsban is actually available. They are no longer registered. But there are other products like Pilot, Chlorpyrifos, Warhawk that at the time, I'm talking winter 23-24, still had the label and were still legal to use. And the language at the time that EPA was using was telling it that at least for the next 2 years, which will be 24, 25, and we're in 25 right now, those products, if grower has them, they are legal to use. So that's my answer when Dan asked me about the status of this. I really don't know if there are any changes. I really don't know if they will be available or legal to use in 26, but I know that if you spray them after the harvest this year on your peach or apple trees on the trunk, this is the best product we have to control any borers. Again, you cannot do anything when the fruit are on the tree, but after the harvest, they have very long residual activity. They really stick to the bark of the trees. And again, we're talking Pilot, Chlorpyrifos, Lambdafos, and Warhawks. Those are the ones that still had the label back in the winter of 23-24. None of the Lorsban label was actually retained at the time. They were gone. And none of those labels were retained for being used. So it is illegal to use Lorsban, and that's for sure. But other products containing chlorpyrifos, which is the active ingredient of Lorsban, might still be around. And I don't know if they will be around in 26, but I think it's, and again, I can't the legal responsibility here. You might need to check it with the company when you have the product or something like this. But my understanding 2 years ago was that we are good to use those products, though remaining what we have in the sheds, at least for in 24 and 25, and we are still in 25. So that's all I have updates. And again, this Lordman part is kind of, I wasn't prepared, but that's what, if my memory serves me well, that's what I think happened with the Lordman. So that's all. Any questions that you might have? Anything that you see in the orchards that I don't see? I'm spending so much time right now being administrator, so but anything?
Yeah, you get the joy of doing paperwork, which is great. Um, no, that's pretty in line with what I'm seeing. I a lot of bird damage, which is not in your realm, but
Yeah.
that's
But that's something that they go after the sugar, they go after the water. We see them everywhere. Even here at Freck, I mean, we got so many losses on our Honeycrisp Premier because of the birds injury. So many
yeah. I mean,
like birds
I,
on peaches, on stone fruit. Yeah, they just
I normally get questions on cherries or berries, but not usually like apples or peaches. So
no. But
this year's interesting.
again, one of the things might be that maybe the stingbugs are there, and they actually trying to catch a stingbugs and they injuring the apples. But again, it's a long shot.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Um,
It's a
That's
possible,
that's
but
optimistic, right?
yeah.
Try.
I'll add that while you were talking, I did wind up trying to find like the EP if there was an EPA Q&A FAQ page. There is on Chlorpyrifos. It is very difficult to read, as you might guess. There's like a question 7 that kind of gives a outline of like things that can still be used. I guess they have a newer label. Uh, and it says like you could still use this after June 30th, 2025. Uh, I don't know. Read it yourselves.
no,
Don't take this as
of this would be a new label. It will be those 2 extra years of the valid old
okay.
labels because I can't imagine any of the manufacturers actually trying right now to register chlorpyrifos. And it really doesn't matter who is it at EPA, that I don't think this will ever fly again. So I
Okay.
think we are out with this product. But again, there was those 15 crops that we
Yeah.
could use them. And maybe, I don't know. It's a open book right now.
Yeah, like I said, it's a very confusing website based on the wording that they use for certain things. Um, but like I said, there is a list of things that you could use up until June 30th, and then things that you could use after. And there's long lists of products that if you had in the shed, you were good to go, and things that hey, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, you
Um,
ask if they can be sold, and
yeah,
I don't think they can be sold because I don't think any of the distributors that I am aware of, any of them actually have them in stock anymore, and they cannot purchase them from any of the companies.
sure.
But it was more about usage of the product that you might still have in a shop.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. It like I said, the website itself is very confusing. It is written in very dense EPA language, as most EPA things are. So thanks for that answer. It was very helpful. Um, and with that, I don't really have anything else. We don't really have anything major coming up. Uh,
Let's hope we won't get any rain before the rest of the Honeycrisp and Gaylight harvest.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
The
we're
cracking.
getting little sprinkles out here in the east. On I think on the tail, probably on the tail edge of the hurricane, but um, it's
And
not
it
too bad.
doesn't look like, at least for here, there's some rain this weekend, but next week looks relatively dry
Yeah,
at this moment in time.
Hey, it might change the next time they
Yep,
update the website.
yep. So, I mean, it basically was telling us that we were not even going to get a tenth of an inch of rain on Wednesday, and we got an inch.
there you
So
go.
I take the weather forecast with a grain of salt as far as the extended forecast.
Well, thank you guys, everybody, for jumping on here. Thank you all for listening. I will try and get this to you as quick as I can, and say goodbye, everybody.
See you later. Good luck.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.